World's Strongest Man changed the format for the 2025 competition, but the big question we're asking is, was it a hit or was it a miss? Auntie Liz, was it a hit or was it a miss? We were at World's Strongest Man. What did you think?
I mean, from my perspective, it was a massive hit because it did like everything that they wanted it to do, it achieved. They didn't want guys coasting the heats. That did not happen. Like, if it had been the old format with second and third place doing a stone off, I could have quite accurately predicted how every single group would have gone. But the Stones of the World event was so exciting and it became so unpredictable. And even the guys that had already qualified for the final were still fighting hard because those points carried through.
That's the big factor. In the past, we've seen so many guys that they know they're safely into the final. Yeah. They take their foot off the gas. They don't have to do anything.
This system,
yeah, they make agreements with other athletes. I've been there before where you could make a deal with an athlete. This got rid of that. There was no area to do that, and athletes had to keep fighting all the way through. We saw some exciting finishes to groups. There was groups where, you know, there was lots of possibilities of people going through, and even people that had qualified were still fighting to try and get that overall lead going into the final. Yeah. So for me, we were there watching. It was entertaining. I think it did everything that they wanted to achieve.
It also meant the heats meant something in the overall grand scheme of things.
Absolutely, and we saw that with the results in the end. You know, athletes had to work hard on 10 events at this year's World's Strongest Man, and people always say 5 events isn't enough. Well, with the heats having to mean something, athletes had to be good at many events.
I guess one small, very mild frustration, and I don't think it was coming from like the hardcore strongman fan base, it was the amount of people who didn't seem to understand what was going on. Like the amount of people, this is a great example that I kept seeing being used, who didn't understand how Mitch came into the final with 10 points, Tom came in with 9, because Tom was leading his group by more points than Mitch was leading his group.
Sure.
So they didn't seem to understand that the 10 finalists were scored only against each other and they weren't being scored against their group. But I didn't bother trying to explain to anyone else.
Yeah, I can see why people on the outside didn't understand it. But basically, what they were doing would be looking at the competition as if it was just those 10 guys against each other from the start. And if that was the case with the heat events, Mitch had the most points, Tom had the second most, Reino had the third, etc.
Etc.
So, you being you've put together some statistics for us.
Wow, the internet has done it. I'm just reporting on it. Thank you, internet. They tag me and stuff as well and send me everything. It's great. I can be super lazy. But yeah, just a few different scoring scenarios, I guess. Just interesting things to look at. You know we like the numbers.
We do indeed.
So the first scenario we have on screen then is if the 10 finalists were scored across all 10 events against each other. So if it had been just a standard 10 event competition with them all going all out on all 10 events, how would it have, what would the results be? And there's just one change. In that scenario, Mitch Hooper wins and Reino now comes third. Everyone else stays the same.
Yeah, interesting change at the top there. Obviously, Tom not moving at all. Mitch would have ended up being first. Reino would have ended up being third. Every other position stays the same. And that's with all 10 events being contested against just those 10 athletes.
Yeah. So on this screen, we can see if they didn't have the carryover of points from the heats into the final and they all started on 0 points, what would that have done if it was just then those 5 events? Now here, everything at the top stays exactly the same. It's at the bottom that we start to see changes. So Eddie Williams and Luke Stoltman in 9th and 10th switch places, and Pavlo and Shane, who were 7th and 8th, also switch places. Everyone else stays the same.
Interesting how this one affects more of the bottom of the table rather than the top.
Yeah.
So this is the most interesting table to me.
Yeah, to me also, and it's the meatiest one, which is why I've saved it to last. So this one is if, this shows you all of the 25 athletes who were in the competition scored against each other in the heats events. Of course, this isn't what happened at World's Strongest Man. They took their 2 finalists from each group and only scored them against each other.
But this really shows us how important heats can be. Who is in your group? Because obviously in the group stages, the points just against those 5 other athletes are all that matter.
Just against 4 other athletes this year.
4 other athletes, yes. And there's some really interesting results. Less so at the top where we've got Mitch, Tom, Reno, Trey. Those guys kind of ended up being the top, guys anyway. However, you go down that list and you take Tristan Hoth, who is in 8th place on this list as if all 25 athletes competed. He would be top 10. Yeah. He was 4th in his group.
Which goes to show how absolutely stacked Group 4 was. The only person he actually beat in that group was Luke Richardson, who pulled out with an injury.
But it's so interesting how you can be 4th in a group of 5, but if it was 25 athletes, you would have placed higher than some of those athletes.
Yeah, and it only gets more interesting because one place below him in the overall is Andre Fouty, who did qualify out of that group. And another below him is Maxime Boudreau, who was in his group and placed higher than him in the heats. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's really not, I get it, but it's...
Well, you take someone like Maxime, for instance, he was super good in the throw. Yeah. So would have got huge points against everyone, whereas in your group, you're only getting 1 point on certain athletes. He would have got a lot more points against that athlete in the whole contest if it was scored 25 athletes against each other.
Yeah, so anyone who had a standout performance, they get rewarded massively with points using this system. It only continues to get more interesting though when we look below Maxime Boudreau. So then we've got Lucas Hatton, Pavlo Cordiaca and Nick Gardione all tied on points. Now, Pavlo and Nick were in the same group. Pavlo qualified, Nick didn't. Using this system though, the last event rule, Nick beat Pavlo on the stones. He would have gone ahead of Pavlo. Then below them is Eddie Williams in Group 1, who did qualify for the final.
Yeah, it is so interesting when you see it kind of put together like this as an individual competition, all athletes against each other. Yeah. So different to just being in the heats. But as an athlete, really all you focus on is who is in your group. Yeah. It's those 5 athletes you're looking at, who's in your group, and it's who do I need to beat, where do I need to score points against that person, rather than the difference that you'll have in a whole competition or a one-day competition or a contest where it's everyone against everyone. Much, much different results.
It goes to show, though, a couple of things. One, how we lose out potentially on the best 10. 2, how it's so hard to equally balance out the groups, because on paper, looking at how you expect people to perform, you might think, okay, this is a balanced group, but then all hell breaks loose. People get injured, people overperform, people underperform, people get sick. You just don't know what's going to happen, and it can end up all over the place.
It does make is it makes excitement, and it certainly this year gave us a lot of surprise results in the heat stages. We saw a lot of new faces in that final.
5 of them.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that is good. It's why a lot of people are talking about World's Strongest Man this year. Obviously, the eventual winner, the story he has is tremendous. But we had like Shane Flowers in the final. We had Paddy Haynes in the final. Paddy wasn't even qualified for Worlds until a few weeks back, where he competed at Europe's Strongest Man. So good to see new faces. We're gonna have new battles in some of the one-day shows where these different athletes will be invited to these events. It makes the sport interesting. But it is so interesting looking at these tables and seeing how different it could have potentially been.
I have a slightly loaded question for you. Using the current format of the World's Strongest Man, do you think this is the best format to determine who is the strongest man in the world?
Good question. Loaded question.
It is a loaded question, and it's not a slight on anyone. It's certainly not a slight on the eventual winner.
I think when we look at a sport like Strongman, it's very hard to decide who is the strongest man in the world off one competition.
Of course. Can I give you a better scenario though?
Yes.
That I think you have all 25 guys, and you have like quarter, semi, final. So you have all of them scored against each other. Maybe it's 12 events in total, and every few events you cut off the bottom.
That's something I've suggested many times in the past.
But that would get
you're stealing it off me here, trying to make it sound like it's one of your ideas.
It's innovative. It's mine. I've patented it now.
I've said many times that I think that would be the best system. Say you start with 20 athletes, and after 4 events you go down to 15 athletes, and then after another 4 events you go down to 10 athletes, and then like have 12 events in total to decide who is the strongest man on earth. That would be how I'd like to see it done.
Yeah. The problem is, of course, the TV contracts make that tricky, because they have to create and sell certain amounts of shows, and maybe you don't want to sell a show that's 20 men deadlifting.
Maybe we'll just.
I would watch it personally.
Maybe we'll just have to put our own contest on at some point.
No, it sounds expensive.
But I did enjoy World's Strongest Man this year.
I loved it.
For someone that's not a huge fan of the heats, it definitely made the heats more interesting to me. I did enjoy it way more than I have for years, if I'm totally honest.
Since the stone off was introduced, this has been the first time.
And I'll say, as a competitor who has been affected by stone offs and cuts and stuff like that, I like that. So even if I was competing and I didn't make the final, I like that I had the opportunity to do all the events.
Yeah.
I think that was a big factor, especially going to World's Strongest Man. If you only end up doing 4 events and only 2 guys are going into the stone off,
whatever it is, yeah.
I don't like that. I like that everyone got to compete all the way through their heats, do all the events.
And the final event that they chose in the heats was such a great varied test as well.
It was something completely new. There was a few new events this year that were really enjoyable. Good to see some changes at World's Strongest Man. Positive changes.
Yeah.
There are still things we want to get better. We always know that. We see the comments, and I'm sure World's Strongest Man see the comments as well. But let's just give World's Strongest Man a thumbs up for making some changes this year, making what I think will be a very entertaining show to watch whenever you guys get to watch it. Being there live was awesome. The fans that were there live seemed to really enjoy the show. And what a story it was this year, with plenty of new faces, but an incredible new champion who is going to go on to be a superstar of the sport. As always, guys, hope you like what we do on the channel. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.